inflation at 4 to 5%, but not have it accelerate
100%.
and slowly inflate away this debt. And in that case, Bitcoin should still go higher.
100%.
And so, listen, I'm long. I'm not selling. I think on a Trump win, we break 73 and go a lot higher fast. On a Harris win, we probably flush down to high 50s, low 60s, bottom, and then end up going up pretty quick.
Novogratz argues that current government debt levels are unsustainable and could lead to long-term inflation. He foresees a future where governments will try to keep inflation around 4 to 5% annually to gradually reduce debt over time without igniting a runaway crisis. In such an environment, he believes that Bitcoin's appeal as a hedge against inflation would continue to grow. Novogratz points out that policymakers need to balance debt reduction with economic stability, avoiding aggressive inflation that could destabilize the economy. Novogratz shares his market outlook based on potential election outcomes. He speculates that if Donald Trump were to win, Bitcoin could quickly break above the $73,000 level, potentially reaching $100,000 in the short term. On the other hand, if Kamala Harris were to win, he anticipates a temporary dip where Bitcoin might drop to the $60,000 range before stabilizing and resuming its upward momentum.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
If you take out 73, your next target's 100. And, that would be my year-end, January target. You often take out 73, you go up to 85, and then you come back and you'll touch 73 again, and everyone will panic, and some people will, paper hands or whatever you want to call them, and then it goes back higher. There's a lot of negative gamma. A lot of people have done call overrides. Listen, there's obviously someone selling a ton of crypto around above 72,000, 70,000. I mean, the price action is, monster supply keeps coming out, and it's concentrated. I wish I could tell you who it was. I don't know. Yelling at all my salespeople to find out, but we haven't seen that flow, right? The market cap of gold is what, 15
trillion, something like that.
Now.
Yeah.
Right. And market cap of Bitcoin at 100 is 2 trillion. And so you got 7x. I've always had that as a 10-year target. 20-year target. What's driving gold right now is China and Russia central bank buying a ton of it. And so you've got central banks taking out supply. We haven't, other than, Ecuador and a few other small places.
El Salvador.
El Salvador, I'm sorry. We haven't really seen, nation state. Abu Dhabi has bought some, but it's, that's a little bit like putting Bitcoin in the reserve. If you're the reserve, you have to have everyone believe you're the reserve for good. If you're going to slowly inflate away that 36 trillion in debt, which you need to do, you've got to be so subtle about it, or it becomes a runaway train. And so, listen, here's the great irony. If Elon came in, or anyone came in, and took us from 125% of GDP back down under 100, I'd be selling my Bitcoin. Right?
I would not, but
our story, I'd be selling my gold. I just don't think there's political will in this country. We have populism on both sides to do the hard things. And that's why I'm wrong a lot of it.
I for the most part, I agree with you. And I think the deficit is a giant problem. That said, I am bullish. The only thing I don't disagree on is I'm bullish on Bitcoin in basically any scenario.
Let me ask you a question. So if I was the Secretary of Treasury and I came in and said, all right, we're cutting the deficit, we're raising taxes a little bit, not a lot, we're slashing spending, we're Social Security, you're now 70 years if you were born, if you're 20 or less, we're means testing both Medicare and Social Security, and we're looking for efficiency gains. When I first got out, my first job was at the Office of Management and Budget in 1984.
You're old, Novo.
I'm old as fuck. And there was a thing called the Grace Commission. W.R. Grace, big company. They took the best and brightest from a bunch of Wall Street firms, sent them to DC for a year and said, come up with exactly what Elon's talking about. Show us how we can make government more efficient. And they had a big book. And the best computer guy in the office at that point was me, as a 20-year-old who could do Lotus Notes. And they said, hey, can you codify this? And I was like, are you kidding? It was a book like this of all the projects. And so they quickly hired Computer Data Corp to do it instead of me. And I went back to college. Like, if you did all of that, do you still think, what's the argument to still be long Bitcoin?
So I think that all of that would set Bitcoin back 5 or 6 years or something. But for me, I don't view crypto as an American thing. I personally think that, like, by far the dominant demand for crypto over the next few decades is the developing world and global South, and it's not like Mali, it's also Brazil, it's definitely Argentina, it's all of Africa,
So let me ask you another fair question. Right now, if I asked any one of those, let's call them places where people have lost a lot of faith in economic stewardship, Nigeria, the Naira just keeps getting worse and worse. Would you rather have a dollar stable coin or a Bitcoin? I think most would still rather have a dollar stable coin because
I agree.
I agree too, but I think that they're heavily correlated. And I think things like, if you have a stable coin, you're going to try to get yield on the deposits. And I think you'll buy a lot of dollar denominated things, treasury bonds, et cetera. But I think you'll also have 10, 20%. That's, you'll buy Bitcoin, you'll buy, some equities, you'll buy some things that are slightly higher interest, slightly higher risk, uncorrelated. I think that, like, stable coin growth, I think, actually feeds crypto growth more broadly. And I think Bitcoin is just a very unique asset that is, for me, my worst case for Bitcoin, in my personal opinion, again, this is not investment advice. My worst case is that Bitcoin surpasses gold, that it flips gold over the next 20 years or something. Like, I think Bitcoin is just, for my generation and younger, I think Bitcoin is just structurally better in every way than gold.
Yep.
And I think that the dream scenario of Bitcoin is it becomes a 100 trillion plus asset class in today's dollars. I think that probably you don't achieve that level if America really gets its act together and, we have the dollar is still the world's, reserve currency in 20, 30 years, that's just still structurally strong. So that's how I think about it.
And just so I'm really clear on my macro view, I think the chance of the US getting its act together is really low.
I agree with you.
Novogratz expresses confidence that Bitcoin will continue to appreciate in value as inflationary pressures persist and demand grows globally. He believes that Bitcoin's adoption by corporations, individuals in emerging markets, and potentially governments will further cement its status as a critical store of value. While he acknowledges that Bitcoin faces regulatory hurdles and skepticism from some policymakers, he views these obstacles as temporary, predicting that they will fade as the market matures and Bitcoin proves its resilience. He also anticipates that increased adoption by younger generations who are more comfortable with digital assets will drive Bitcoin's growth over the next few decades. In his view, the probability of the U.S. addressing its fiscal challenges and returning to a low-debt, low-inflation environment is slim, further strengthening the case for Bitcoin.
If you look on a 10-year time horizon, I think the thing that would be the next step to really drive like giant demand would be, corporate balance sheets saying, the dollar has some structural issues, like some inflationary issues, like we need working capital. Bitcoin's very liquid. We'll put 5% of our cash into, Bitcoin or whatever. And sure, return, if you have too much surplus cash, return some to shareholders, buy back shares, etc. But I think the level beyond that would be nation state activity. Obviously, if people felt like the US was going to set up a Bitcoin reserve, like it's things would go freaking wild.
Things will
Other
go
countries
haywire, right?
Yeah, the Middle East, like UAE, will try to front run us, and it will go crazy.
Well, here's a question then directed at Novo. If Harris wins, do you think there's any plausibility for the U.S. establishing a Bitcoin reserve of some kind, or do you think that just extends, that prospect?
Listen, as a Bitcoin holder, you'd love a Bitcoin reserve. As a policy guy, I think the government can make a strong argument that we're going to own some Bitcoin on our balance sheet to signal that we're going to be technology first, that we're going to be an innovator and a leader in, decentralized systems and, freedom, if you want to be bold about it. Right? George Washington said there's no freedom without private property, and Bitcoin is private property in its purest sense, right? And so we can make that argument. I think it's very dangerous for a central bank or a country who is the reserve currency to say, I'm going to put other. Think about what happened with Luna, right? Luna was using the Luna token as its reserve for its algorithmic stablecoin. And when they said, oh, we're not going to use some Bitcoin because we're worried about Luna, people said, wait a minute, how does this whole thing work? You're turning magical internet money into dollars to buy Bitcoin. You think you can do that infinitely? And that created the awareness that all wasn't well in a algorithmic stablecoin where they were paying 18% leverage, 18% interest, right? It didn't, that awareness wasn't there until they bought Bitcoin. And so you've got to be pretty careful when you're the reserve currency. Right? Traditionally, who wins the reserve currency? The country that has the navy that controls the seas. The Brits did it, the Spaniards did it, the Brits did it, we did it. And we used to
Army, Navy is by far the most important. But I think the second thing is it's whichever country has historically had the store of value as well. Yeah. And I think kind of the hidden secondary piece around the dollar becoming the world's reserve currency was in addition to, UK going into lots of debt and their Army, Navy being heavily weakened and kind of being seen as probably not even a top 3 Army, Navy post World War II. During World War II, almost all of the world's gold went to America for safekeeping. And so when you came out of World War II, just France's gold, the UK's gold, Spain's gold, it was all just sitting in America. And so we already had it in our banks.
Mike Novogratz presents a compelling case for Bitcoin as a transformative asset in an era of fiscal irresponsibility, inflation, and global economic instability. His insights shed light on Bitcoin's unique value proposition as a decentralized global store of value and a potential hedge against inflation. With growing demand in developing nations and the increasing likelihood of adoption by corporations and possibly even governments, Bitcoin appears poised to play a significant role in the global financial landscape. For Novogratz, Bitcoin represents more than just an asset. It is a means of financial empowerment and a safeguard against government overreach. His bullish outlook underscores his belief that Bitcoin will continue to outperform traditional assets like gold, ultimately becoming a dominant reserve asset for the digital age. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a newcomer to the crypto space, Novogratz's analysis serves as a valuable guide to understanding Bitcoin's potential in the years to come.
Please like and subscribe my channel.